And we're back. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Half Quarter Hangout. Here with my good buddy Schwoob.
What's up, guys?
And myself, because I love it. Hope everyone had a great week. I know Schwoob had a busy one, and I had a
It doesn't
super boring one.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was a boring week. Not gonna lie, I had to spend a week at meetings, so it's been boring.
Meetings.
I mean, they're supposed to be for something, so we learn. Apparently,
get educated.
Educations, yeah, that's what they are. Courses more than meetings, I guess. Anyway, yeah, part of the job. So yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about where we left off last week, and where we'll be going. Last time we chopped, I was just or talked. Last time we talked, I was just about to chop, and you were dealing with a plethora of madness. How's everything going on your end right now?
My youngest still congested the hell, but everyone else has kind of gone through it. But then my oldest got stitches last night because he fell off the kitchen chair and face planted.
Oh, poor little guy.
So it's been a lot of no sleep lately, more than usual. So,
jeez. Well, hopefully things get better. Tonight will be a short hangout, and you'll go to sleep.
No, I gotta get caught up in the garden.
Garden first, then sleep. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about garden. How is your garden?
It's actually doing surprisingly well. It's been
Good.
vegging for far too long, but it's bouncing back and everything looks super healthy. I'm going to chop it all the breeding projects in half tonight, so top one more last time, and I have one last night to finish trimming, and I'm clearing that section out and flowering. So I should be on track to do it either next week or the week after. Get everything set up.
Awesome.
Your first time in 6 months of flowering.
Yeah. Do you know what you're gonna flower? Sorry, a breeding project you said?
I have the two AK39s cross to Storm Shadow, and then the two Storm Shadow F2s.
Okay. And you flower in the same place that you dry. That's why you're kind of waiting.
Yep.
Yeah. Taking up space. I get it. I'm in the same boat. I do the same thing. So right now I have all my girls hanging in the tent. Last time we talked, cheers, MLT. Thanks for stopping in. I don't know if you have a chat tonight. Do you see chat tonight?
No.
He has no chat, so if anyone wants to say anything to him,
you got to yell really loud in the screen.
Yeah, he'll hear it. Yeah, so last time we talked, I was just talking about a couple of days away from chop. I let it go 63 days, and I turned the lights off for 2 days, and I cut them on day 65. At the end of day 65, so let's talk about how I do it or what I do. Like, some people might not know what. Yeah, I chop a whole plant, and depending on, yes, MLT, you can talk as much shit as you want about him. I won't tell him you said anything. No. I chop a whole plant and I trim as little as possible. Cheers, Perp. Thanks for stopping in, buddy. I chop a whole plant. I trim as little as possible off because I don't have a huge amount of plant mass going into my little drying area. And my objective is to actually not dry too fast and to extend that drying period. All right. So for that reason, I leave the whole plant attached to the whole stem all the way down to the bottom. I have done it in different ways depending on space and how much product I have at the end, how thick the buds were, and how fast I wanted them to dry, so on and so forth. Usually I'm in the boat of trying to extend the dry as long as possible. And for that reason, I cut off from the bottom. I may pull off a few big fan leaves here and there, but normally I try to leave everything on there. I flip it right straight upside down. Hanging from the bars of my grow tent, I have a couple of strings. They're just a loop, about 8 inches long. There's 6 of them. And what I do is I have a hanger, and I just hang it through the loop, and then the hanger comes down. So I can have 6 hangers in there, and each hanger I can hang 2 plants off of. I only ever do 9 in that 4x4 at a time, mostly 6 or 9 plants anyway. And I hang 1 off each side. Right now I have 6 in there, so I have the 3 hangers with 2 on each side, and I have a 1 fan at the bottom of the tent, and it is blowing down onto the floor and just circulating the air up around. On the top of the tent, I have my exhaust fan, and I have that AC and Infinity controller and fan. So I have it set to a temperature and humidity, and I try to maintain as close to 60 Fahrenheit and 60 to 64% humidity. Usually I'm around 65 to 66 Fahrenheit and in between 58 and 62% humidity. I find like that's my sweet spot to extend the dry as long as possible. If I could get it colder in there, I would. It's just hard.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the interior of a house in a closet with I have to run a air conditioner to it. It's not easy. Cheers, Remo. Thanks for stopping in, buddy.
Cheers, buddy.
Can
I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, please.
Okay, first off, do you have any weird rituals when it comes to your shop? I know myself personally, I have some weird things I do. Certain songs are played.
No, but that's great. I like to hear that. What do you do?
So the Manhattans "Kissing Goodbye," the song is played.
Okay, really?
Kind of, yep, awesome. Yep. It's just a little farewell song to him.
Oh, that's great.
I also pluck off leaves before, like I water it heavily, kind of during the flush last time. Pick some leaves off, label the bags, and freeze those just in case when I'm drying it, I need to re-add some moisture.
Okay, good.
So
good
I keep the same kind of taste profile.
Mm-hmm.
Just little things like that, as well as I hang the whole plant just as you, but I also sometimes need to put a humidifier in that room to keep the humidity at the right check.
Yep.
And then it's a constant balance game with timers and exhaust fans kicking on.
Yep. I have both dehumidifier and humidifier. So for the first 4 days, I'm running dehumidifier, and it's outside the tent. All right, and what it does, it dries the air that the tent's going to exchange into it, because it's my tent just pulls air from the room. And after about day 4, actually today, it's day 5, I was able to turn it off and maintain that 60% humidity. Now I won't need to run it, but by tomorrow I'll need to add maybe a humidifier, possibly, who knows.
Yeah.
Another way to deal with that, if I can keep my temperature down low, is just turning off the exhaust fan and allowing more longer intervals in between exhausting the tent itself and allowing it to build up a little better in there, because if you were to jar that, it would build in moisture up really quick, right?
Sweat it out. Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk about maybe why we are trying to maintain that
sweet
moisture, for so long. So go ahead, you can go first.
Nobody likes smoking powdery weed.
Yeah, that's a good, that is very important.
It's harsh.
Why you like it to take so long to dry out?
It maintains terpene profile.
Right.
If you keep in the right zone, you won't off gas terpenes. The moisture content helps with the burn of the actual cannabis itself. So instead of like, burn up really quickly, you joint canoeing, it actually burns evenly. Even oil production in the plants, if you dry it too quickly, you'll have that dry out, and it actually, I've noticed myself personally, it affects the taste.
Yeah. Absolutely, because it'll affect the cure. So, in order for the cure to actually happen, it has to be above 58% humidity into that 60 to 62%, maybe even 64% humidity. What's that got on it? I can't see it.
It says 58 to 62.
Yeah, so there you go. If your humidity is below that, the curing process doesn't work. And if your humidity is above that, your potential of causing a bud, like a mold or issues like that, I'm not too sure about whether or not curing stops at that point. I don't know. I think it's okay. It's still technically the process is still happening, but it might cause a mold or something else as well. But because it's a chemical process that happens, right?
The term is anaerobic state.
There you go. You have to keep it there. I cure in jars. I see you using those bags, and it makes me think that if that's holding a humidity, there's something porous in there.
Yeah, it's almost a one-way moisture content, so it allows moisture to leave to a certain degree.
Yeah, how? Where is there like a perforated side to it or something?
No, it's just the membranes of the material itself.
Okay.
So it's like if you have a Ziploc bag and you put it in water, at some point, like if you have air in it, there will be some moisture buildup in the inside. It's the condensation. It's allowing it to permeate through. It's not 100% waterproof. It will over time build up. So same concept, but just reverse. So far, I got to admit, I'm enjoying the bags. I've tried it with 4 different strains, and it's kept the smell like I've never seen before in jars. So
really,
yeah.
Better than the jar.
Better than the jar, bud. No more burping.
I'm scared. I'm scared to try new things, but I will. I'll always.
I was too.
You know what?
I was too.
I was scared to stop using paper bags. You know how long we used brown bags for?
Brown bagging it. Yep.
Just that sweating process works really well of the paper, right? I do it in jars now, but
I will say with the grow bags, you don't have as much forgiveness with if you put it in too damp. It will mold over pretty quickly. With jars, you're allowed to see that sweating process. You should double check, especially if you heat seal this thing. Like you have the option to heat seal these. The first run I did the Ziploc. That's it. You want to reuse them. But if you heat seal them, you really don't want to cut that bag open for 6 to 8 weeks minimum. So
I would say if I was to use something like that, I would not heat seal it until sort of the cure is done. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to do long storage, maybe heat seal it at that point.
Yeah.
Because it should maintain its moisture level at that point. But I mean, it's eventually gonna, if it's the plastic material itself is porous in some way, then eventually that moisture content is going to change.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. But at what point it happens? So I've left the bag in there since I've stacked it, and I keep checking it once a month, and it's still the same, man.
Yeah, just leave one and see how long it goes. Maybe even just with a little bit of weed in it. Just to see.
So what I want to do is I want to get a wood moisture meter, and I want to check the stem. That way I can determine when it starts to drop.
I'm actually thinking about doing that just because right now when I dry, I'm like, I go in there after a couple days. I smell, okay, everything still smells good. I don't smell anything funky. I don't smell grass or hay or like it's over drying or any of that kind of crap, or like it's too wet or anything like that. Then I go in there a few days later and I do the same thing. It's just a smell at this point. I'm just what's going on in here, right? And I'll After about 6 days, I'm starting to feel it all still really wet. You can tell by looking at it, the stalks are green. You want them to pale out a little bit. It would be nice to be able to open it up and grab something and go, bleep. Nope, it's not ready yet. Bleep. Nope, it's not ready yet. You know, just.
Yep. Oh, 15%. We're close. Maybe a day or two.
Yeah.
12% money.
Yeah. Throw it in jars.
Yep. 9 to 12% is your happy spot.
Perp says he started vacuum sealing the jars. So put it in a jar and then vacuum seal that, which is that's where I would go to if I'm doing long-term storage.
They actually make those special lids for the mason jars, ball jars that are just vacuum seal pumps.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, vacuum seal the inside. Oh, okay. Yeah. Vacuum sealing jars. Oh, that's what he's talking about. That must be perp. Is that what you're talking about? Like the jar itself vacuum seals, like you can pull the air out of the inside of the jar? Or are you talking about like taking a jar and throwing it in a bag and vacuum sealing it? That would be different, I guess.
Would it? I don't think it'd be. You're still vacuuming. Well, if you let the jar crack a little bit, they'd allow the air.
You'd have to let air circulate. You could probably you'd want to put the lid on for stability, maybe, of the jar so you don't crush it or something, but poke a couple holes in it.
Like it's a bug.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm guessing that's what he's doing. He's using a jar that he can pull the air from, which is that's really the trick. I think people are using CO2 as well, right? Like canning them, you know, can read a little CO2. Would it be CO2 that you use? Yeah, I think so, right?
As long as you displace the oxygen, you could use nitrogen in theory.
Yeah, I think nitrogen too. I think they might even use that. That's what I was thinking.
Helium might work. As long as it's food grade, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Science, bitches.
Yeah, and then let's talk a little bit about trimming. We once we get to that point where we're wait, first let's talk about, when do you trim? Do you wet trim or do you dry trim?
Oh, it's an internal debate with myself sometimes. Sometimes wet trim, sometimes a dry trim. I tend to dry trim just because I don't get to it in time, as we've seen in my current tent.
Yeah.
But if I have time, I try to wet trim it because I'm a busy person. It's just when I get to it, I don't mind.
So you don't have a preference. You don't have nothing makes you feel different about it, and you don't feel any kind of way about it.
My personal favorite way is dry trimming, but to the point where the sugar leaves, you put some gloves on, just kind of jiggle your thumbs and knock them off, and no scissors needed, because I hate hours of this, hours and hours of gripping my hand.
So when I used to, when I was young, I trimmed for a friend who was growing some weed. It was sort of like a part-time job. He'd go there he'd circulate through the groups of friends, and everyone had their little trim crews. Anyway, long story short is everyone was wet trimming. It wasn't even a thing to dry trim, and we really liked it as our little crew, because you get finger hash and it was someone else's weed, and I mean, you care, but you don't care. You're trimming fast. Yes. You're trying to get as many done as fast because you're getting paid by the pound.
It's piecework.
Yeah. So I did my fair share of it, and then when I started growing at home by myself, I started doing that because that was what I knew. And then someone was like, "Oh, you don't dry trim?" And I was like, "Dry trim? That's weird." Like the whole concept to me was like, how do you can't even, like, what? No, you don't.
Wait, you want to waste time and dry it?
Like dry trim? Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me. So I tried it. The first time I tried it, after he explained to me why he did it, first time I tried it, I was like, oh, I'm never going back. So the reason he explained it to me was like, this is a guy who makes hash. And at this point, I was starting to learn to make hash, and I was starting to really just get more knowledgeable about weed in general, and that's when I realized it's the trichomes. So smashing them up with scissors, not great, right? So like I'm that guy who holds only the stem, and I start with like the tip of the scissors closed, and I'm like just like picking off the big leaves around the outside. And then I take the tip of the scissors and I only go in and I get just the stalk of whatever stem I can from the bottom. Like I hold it upside down, look down on it, or look it from the bottom, and I try to get every stalk as close in as possible. So I don't get left with those crow feet of
Yep.
it's
That
just like
sounds
a
like
stalk with
Lawrence.
like this much leaf on it. I hate the look of that. It looks horrible on bud. But I'll leave all of the little brown hairs there. Like I don't manicure rounded shaped buds because to me that's destroying the trichomes. I just pluck off and tip with it, and then into a jar. I try really hard to never ever put it in a bag. And I usually take a small amount out of my large jar, put it into a smaller jar. So I'm only messing around with that little bit that's getting touched a lot and used until it gets gone, and then another little small amount into the. And I just try really hard now that I know it's so precious in there, right? Yeah, that changed my habit real quick. It makes
Your
a difference.
statement right there makes me feel personally attacked.
It makes a difference. So when I saw people throwing it through trim machines, and maybe like I know this one guy who uses this bowl trimmer. I was like, what? And here's what's really funny. People say things like this. I just use it for my small stuff that I'm gonna make hash with. That's the one you want to keep the trichomes on, man. Like don't run that through there.
You're better off just bucking it and leaving it.
Yeah, pretty funny stuff. I get it. I understand business and numbers and high flow and all that shit. I get it. I'm a home grower. I'm talking to the home growers. That's what the show's about. We're talking to the guys who want to just grow a little bit of weed at home, and we're trying to make it seem easy. That's why, because it is easy. Like, look at what we do. You should see. I wish I could bring you over to my veg. I'll get set up for it next time. They're horrible. I put them in the cups finally. I took them out of the trays.
Joyous moment. Mark the
9 weeks in a clone tray.
9 weeks is rookie numbers. Rookie
Yeah,
numbers.
it's funny, eh? So anyway, next we're talking about trimming. You're doing wet or dry depending on where how rushed you are.
Yeah.
You're not like me where it's dry trim only and take it easy. And I trim into a little trim bin because every little leaf that falls, this just goes to show you why you need to be so gentle with it. Just those leaves just falling off the bud and hitting the trim bin. When you lift that up, you don't have to do any movement on there. Just them falling. You lift up your trim bin and look underneath it, and you're collecting nice. I have jars of it around here somewhere. Trichomes. This one's full. This is Primal Punch. I can tell by the smell of it, and it's phenomenal. Still smells absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, so that's just what goes through my little trim bin. And then I collect up all my trim. And if I'm quick enough with it, I try to get it to a freezer and process it as quick as possible. Sometimes it just gets put aside, oxidizes a little bit, and then gets processed. And it's just not as good of a product when that happens. I mean, if you can process it within a couple of days, that's phenomenal. That's like, no, seriously, it's a really good product. It makes a huge difference within like 3 weeks. The product has changed if you haven't froze it. If you can stick it in the freezer, you're good for till you take it out.
Yeah.
So what do you do with trim? Let's talk about it. I said process. Let's talk about trim. What do you do with your chop suey?
Personally, I have two things I do. I make water hash. I make can of butter to make edibles. Sometimes I'm doing the CBD run. I'll do oil for the cats, but generally it's a wash and goes with butter.
Cool.
Just
let's talk about
the stuff I wash, I run through the magic butter maker, just pull everything out of it. Yep.
Let's talk about wash.
Sure.
You stay washed, like everyone knows what that means. Let's explain that to someone like Perp who doesn't know anything about washing weed. It's like
I want to do a terrible job
like,
now. Just
there's like there's 5 people in here, so I had to pick out someone. Let's pretend that someday someone else is going to watch this and they don't know what washing means. So let's talk a little bit about it, because this is a absolutely game changer. You're going to create some product that could be better than your weed. And if your weed's not that great, this is something you can do with all your weed and turn it all into something good. If you're someone who doesn't want to smoke weed and you want concentrates, or you want to have small, concentrated amounts to get the same effect, or you want to cook with it, or you want to make oil, we can talk about RSO. That's really, really cool. Yeah, so let's talk about wash. So washing means,
in layman's terms,
yeah, go for it.
You're going to be washing. It's almost like a washing machine, the basic principle. So I have the Bubba Hash dude, I believe it is. It's a little machine about 15 inches by about 35 inches tall. It has you fill it full of ice and water mix. You take your trimmings and your larf that you've hopefully had in the freezer already. You take it out, everything's nice and cold. The colder the better, because the trichomes will snap off a lot crisper instead of being damaged. You put it into the wash, you run the machine 15-minute intervals, you drain it through this different size micron bag filters. So it starts off, I'm trying to get the numbers here. Perhaps going to be yelling at the screen.
We can do that. Well, we'll do that on a show about washes, but let's just give them a quick process, because we can tell them a little bit about how each of those bags are basically a different size screen, which collects different size heads. And by heads, we mean the trichome heads. Each of those heads can be a different sort of strength of hash. Some people would like to say what they do is a full spectrum, where they're trying to collect all of those heads and put them together into one batch, or you can do individual spectrums. All right.
So essentially, just think of it as first layer would be cheesecloth, essentially, kind of take up all the plant matter, your leaf, any bud matter still there. Next layer would be like your bigger trichome pieces, maybe your longer stems to the trichomes. As it goes down, they're tinier heads, and as you go down, it's a higher grade. So the higher the number, or the bigger the trichome, the lower the grade, in essence. Some grades are used more for edibles, and other grades are used more for hash. So when I press my hash itself, you want to say something?
Nope, just up to a certain size. So the bags run from about a 220 micron down to like a 25 micron. And I would say the 220 is what we call a work bag. That's the bag that we would do the wash in, or if you're not washing in a bag, that's the first bag you run through to collect leaf matter and stem and anything that's really, really big. After the 220, you're going to hit a 190. This one is also like a secondary trash bag. Usually doesn't have very much goodness in it as well. After the 190, you hit a 160, I believe, and the 160 can now start being, decent, something okay. I usually would include everything after the 160 down to the 25. Like, I don't include the 25. I would consider the 25 food grade. I use that to make butter, or just bake with it straight up if you want. Throw it in something. The 45 to the 160 is sort of, I guess, what people would call full spectrum. Is that right? Somewhere in there.
I've seen them use a little bit wider of a spectrum, but yeah, you're pretty close there.
Let's see.
But yeah, if you are going to wash hash, little tip, keep an old pizza box. They're great for drying out the finished products.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Because that's one thing at the end of it that I didn't know the first time running it was the drying process. So you have a 25 micron little screen you put on a piece of cardboard, put your finished product, and the moisture is sucked out from the wash material to the cardboard itself, and then aired off. Oh, he's in the zone raging.
Sorry. Where were we at? I'm not going to get into it because it's going to take me long to read through everything. Let's just continue talking about washing. Again, we got into like a hash washing session there. So reason why we do this is you can take a very subpar product and turn it into something really, really good. You can make it's similar to what I just showed you in that little jar. You can collect it together. From there, you can do different things. You can smoke that straight as it is, just put it in the joints. You can vaporize it if it's a good quality and melty.
Nice.
You can hot knife it. You could dab it. You can collect it together and put it into rosin bags and squish it and make hash rosin, which is what I would do with it. Because basically what you're doing is you're taking a filtered product and just filtering it one more time. Basically, that's what making rosin would be doing. You're taking so the way the water collection works. I mean, water is not a solvent. It's a carrier of the head. So we do not dissolve the trichomes from the cannabis. That's why it needs to be at certain temperatures. All we're doing is picking those heads up because water and oil are not going to mix, right? It's not dissolving it. It's picking these oily heads up in little and anything else that can float around in that water at that time. And that's why we run it through these bags. The first one being one to collect trash, and then each one below that collecting the different grades of trichome heads. After you take that water out, we talked about you collect it from these bags, and then you're going to dry it. And you mentioned pizza boxes, and that was a really long running thing. So drying it on parchment paper was sort of a hard thing to do. A lot of guys nowadays, like, I mean, the high-tech guys are throwing it straight onto parchment paper or straight on stainless steel sheets and putting it into a freeze dryer and pulling the moisture and freezing it at the same time. Like, give me a break. I don't have $5,000 to spend on a freeze dryer, so I do what you do. I pizza box it or cardboard or whatever. But pizza box is the reason why people like that is because the inside is not like flaky, papery cardboard. It's like a food grade kind of a finish. Not really food grade, but it is food grade, I guess. The finish the finish is better, and you can lay that hash on there and let the moisture evaporate from both sides. When there's parchment, the bottom will stay moist sometimes. Oh, I hear the song playing.
Oh, laundry, yeah.
That's awesome. So after you dry it, and it's very, 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 very important to dry it because it'll mold. Just happens.
No one wants moldy hash.
Nobody likes it. So you want to dry right out, like powdery. And after it dries, the first time I what people call sieve it, or you can use a microplane and microplane it. And by microplane, I mean like a really very small holes, like a grater. It's, usually used for like garlic and stuff. It's like a little.
It breaks up like the size of a little. Like,
you want to break it up really small into like a very even powder, and then you dry that again and let that dry out before you would package it or do whatever you want to do with it. After it's dried out and you know that it's dry, you're not going to risk of any mold. You can do different things with it. So some people like to smoke it like that, just fucking pour a little bit of powder into a joint, or maybe coat the outside of a joint with a little oil and stick that to the outside of it, or what, who knows, all kinds of different things like that. A little sprinkle, like you said, a little sprinkle. Some people like to smush it together and dab it, or smush it together and do the same thing. Still put that in the joints. It'll burn differently a little bit. You can concentrate a little more. First of all, you can put it together. Some people will take that product and, what we said, put it into rosin bags and squish it into hash rosin. Some people will age it. That's what Frenchie was known for. You put it together, and then you use a warm a bottle with warm water, warm glass bottle.
Yep.
And roll it out until it was I don't know what word you would use to describe it. Like, I guess homogenized, sort of like just together, melted together really well. I don't even know how long he does it for. I don't know the process well enough. Search Frenchie Cannoli on YouTube and watch some of his videos. He is, rest in peace, he is a master, a legend.
Oh, yeah.
A legend. And then after he would roll it out, he would form it into a ball and take that ball and age it. If you can get that ball with 0 creases on it, no, like a cue ball.
Temp ball.
Yeah, if you can get it like that, you can, after you just wrap it in a little plastic or maybe saran wrap it and age that for a long period of time. Some people would not even wrap it, just leave it like that. Yep, because you shouldn't be able to permeate the outer edge.
Yeah.
Right.
In theory, it's a ball of oil.
Yeah. Some other things that we do with it, we can make RSO, which is short for Rick Simpson oil, who was a guy who was known for, I don't know if inventing or creating the idea or just popularizing it. I haven't done enough research on that, but I'll tell you his name and what the process is. And the process is using this is where you use a solvent, and you take that same product, you put it into a liquid solvent, and then you strain it and evaporate the solvent away, and you're left with an oil, or you can be left with a shatter, depending what solvent you use. They react to it differently. So I've tried it. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to be clear, when you say solvent, you're not talking any solvent, you're talking the food grade solvent.
Yeah, so I was just about to get into there. So in my experience, I've used isopropyl alcohol as a solvent to do it. Mm-hmm. And I've used butane. It's the 2 different ways that I've done it. I know friends that use ethanol, and then there's all kinds of new techniques.
Everclear, stuff like that.
Everclear is also same as like ISO, I would say, similar to doing
like grain alcohol is another one.
Yeah. And different processes with them. With butane and those pressurized ones, there's open and closed blasting. Open blasting would be just running it straight through and it evaporates as it comes out. Closed loop would be pressurizing it, filling a colander or a cylinder with your product and pressurizing that liquid in there and allowing it to sit for whatever period of time that you want, and then extracting the liquid from it and filtering it. And then you keep that butane, you can reuse it. You don't have to, it doesn't just, it's not just evaporating. So those are just some different things that we would do with our trim. We're going to have some shows on how to do that, and when we do it, we'll invite people on who obviously know a little more about it than we do. And
hash party, let's go.
Yes, I think we should do that. Have him on for a show. That would be fantastic.
Got a wash party.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So yeah, anyway, that's it for this week's episode. We're going to get back next week. Let me do a quick shout out to some of our favorite shows around here. We think it's important to spread the word, hit the thumbs up, like our show, subscribe if you haven't, tell your friends, get them to subscribe, and also subscribe and like all of these other gentlemen's and ladies shows here. We're gonna go through a quick list, starting with Grandmaster Level, Let's Be Buds, Canna Fitness, Michigan Bros Grow Show, Caribou Heart TV, Dumador and the Flavors, Future Cannabis Product, FCPO2, which is Future Cannabis Project 02, Unfiltered with Mr. Grow It, Garden Talk with Mr. Grow It, Green Bicycles, The Neighborhood Grows, Medical Mondays Podcast, Arroya, Perfect Gardens, Photosynthec, the Grow From Your Heart Podcast, Potent Ponics, Growing with the Fellow Fishes, Growing with the Fishes, Embracing Organics, Eagle Gardens, Operation Grow, The Dude Grows, From the Stash Podcast, Craft Farmer Cut the Check, Cannabis Lifestyle TV, Cheap Home Grow, the Irie Army Podcast, Crimson Grows, Canna Mink, Growcast, and the Green Table. And please, anybody has any other shows they like to watch and shout out, please write their names in the chat and we will keep our eyes open for those at the end of every show. We want to add everyone's favorite show on there. It has to be a YouTube show. Let's leave it there. Just anything on YouTube that's cannabis related. Shout them out. All right, everyone. Thanks for stopping by.